Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range. This is for Clementine and Otis.
I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Wadi Wadi people of the Darawal Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This was and always will be Aboriginal land, and sovereignty was never ceded.
Let's start with some shout-outs today. So, as always, our sponsors, INDOSOLE. If you go to their website, indosole.com, and use promo code THT, you will get a discount on a sick pair of slides or flip-flops. They're made from recycled motor vehicle tyres, and they have distributors all over the world. You'll get your delivery within days. But more importantly, you're actually advocating for making conscious consumer decisions. So INDOSOLE are really trying to change the game. They're trying to change the game in terms of people understanding where their clothing comes from, and they're actually then collecting old, flip-flops, sandals from other companies, and they're actually using those as part of their processes as well to keep them out of landfill. And to date, they have prevented over 100,000 tyres from going into landfill, not to mention being burnt, and not to mention that when they are being stored, the diseases they can actually carry, like malaria and dengue fever. So indosole.com, use code THT for a discount, support the show as well. Now I'm going back to the Stephen Ellis GoFundMe. We're up to about $12,500 of the $20,000 required to get this guy a car. Now listen, this guy is like one of the sickest skaters I've ever seen. He's also a double leg amputee, and he needs a vehicle to drive his children to school. And to meet the modifications required, he needs to get a car in the $20,000 range to meet government standards, and we're almost there. So it's coming up to Christmas, and if you want to actually make change, I really believe it's these little things. This is a legitimate, tangible GoFundMe where you can actually make a difference in not just Stephen's life but his children as well. So let's go.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Today's guest is Maneesha Todd. Maneesha is a Sociology Honours Graduate. She's the Support Co-ordinator for Amnesty International and environmental and social justice activist. This year, Maneesha established the Australian Southeast Coast branch of the Tomorrow movement, and it's a movement of young people putting pressure on the government to create a new political common sense with a vision to take back democracy from big business to create a tomorrow that is sustainable for all levels of society. And just saying those words makes me excited. I'm fist pumping the air, and so is Maneesha. Maneesha, it's the best. Now, outspoken, powerful, and driven by an innate sense of conviction, Maneesha is with me to share her journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Maneesha Todd, welcome.
Oh my gosh. You should write all of my resumes.
Really? Dude, I'll charge you.
I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Are you?
Yes.
It's impressive. Actually, as I was reading, I was like, I really do believe that you have an innate sense of conviction. From the moment I actually met you, I was just like, I don't know, it just kind of emanates out of you. Have you been told that before?
I think it depends on what context you meet me in. I don't always try and shove my opinions down people's throats. I think there have been times when people have said that I'm inspiring. I don't really like that word. But
why would they say that?
I don't know, just some of the stuff that I do, I guess. But I think it really depends on who, because I do move in some activist circles and there are a lot of people doing a lot more than me. So it really depends on who I'm talking to, because I'm not that impressive compared to many other people out there.
That's a very humble approach. How do you feel about being described as an activist?
I was pretty hesitant to describe myself as an activist probably until quite recently, when I got more involved in the Tomorrow movement, because I think that being an activist means being active, obviously. And for the past couple of years, although I was doing a lot, it felt very ad hoc. I was, doing stuff for different organizations and I wasn't really part of like a core group where I could do something on a more regular basis. And
Gotcha.
I think until I've I guess done something where it's like I feel more committed and tied and loyal to that particular organization or movement or whatever you want to call it. I think at that point I'm like, okay, I can wear this label confidently now. I think before it's like, am I doing enough? I don't know. You know what I mean?
I kind of feel like personally the term activist can often be associated with someone who's militant, which isn't necessarily true.
No, definitely.
But I like the term that you mentioned was like, I'm just being active. So would you say that you're not sitting on the fence on things?
No.
Do you see?
I mean, on some things, yes. Like I do think that everyone wants to have an opinion on everything these days, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But at the same time, we're not all experts and we shouldn't expect to be experts on everything. So I think it is okay to abstain from having an opinion and sitting on the fence and acknowledging that actually you don't know enough.
Yes.
And that, that's totally fine. That being said, I think I am very opinionated. But I also like to acknowledge that I'm always on learning. I'm always learning, always growing, changing my views, probably becoming more radical, if anything, these days.
Yes. Sorry, I think radical is good. I mean, I agree with what you're saying in terms of, it's okay not to have an opinion on everything because it can be completely overwhelming. But I also believe that if you're sitting on the fence on an issue, you're actually advocating and supporting the status quo.
Yeah.
And especially if it is something that you are passionate about or it's affecting you or those around you, I kind of feel like we have a responsibility to be active.
Yeah, no, I do agree. It's like that quote, if you're neutral, you're on the side of the oppressor. And I think that does fuel a lot of probably, my activism, I guess, and my opinions. Because, I guess, you learn and then you're like, no, this is wrong. And there's a lot of grey areas about things, but I have some core principles. I stand for human rights, equality, justice, dignity.
What do those principles speak to you personally?
I mean, I could probably go on. I think.
Go on.
Well, I'm working for a human rights organisation, so I guess that's always top of mind. And I think that they are flawed, and it's important to remember that it's a human invention. Like, they were made in the 40s, post-war. It's pretty incredible, actually. I think it's like probably one of the best human inventions.
Well, for those that aren't aware, can you maybe give us an explanation of what Amnesty International is and what you do for them?
Sure. So Amnesty International is a human rights organisation primarily focused on campaigning and research. And we use thorough research and evidence collection by experts to raise awareness of human rights abuses around the world. And we have a movement of over 8 million people worldwide. So it's also about mobilising those people to take action, challenge injustice, put pressure on governments and people in authority to make sure that everyone's human rights are respected. And human rights that we use are based on the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
Oh, in terms of what I do,
Yes.
none of the fun stuff. So my title of my role is Support Co-ordinator. So I am the voice of Amnesty, actually quite literally, like if you call, it's my voice.
Like a voice recording? Like,
Yeah. Like, welcome to Amnesty International. Press 1 and be put through to this team.
Is that you?
Yeah. Just for the Australian branch.
You do have a good voice.
Thank you. I have been told that before.
You should start a podcast.
I have been told that before.
Have you really?
Only because of my voice, not because I have any.
I don't want any competition. Stop it. It'll be better than mine. Go. Keep going.
So I guess I'm, the first point of contact. If you call Amnesty, if you email Amnesty, if you message us on Facebook, it's our team that responds. So it's like admin, there's data entry, there's also an activism support component. So we have activist groups all around the country. We help coordinate events. And I, at the moment, am also doing like a professional development opportunity where I'm a campaign coordinator for our Right to Protest campaign, which has been really awesome to have that opportunity.
So what kind of inquiries are you getting on a daily basis there? Is it people who want to actually raise awareness about a human rights violation, or people who want to be active or protest? Are these your regular phone calls and communication you're getting?
We do get a lot of people who have had lived experience and contact us, and they can actually be very challenging because sometimes, and often in a lot of cases, we can't do that much because we do focus on systemic human rights abuses. It really depends on the issue. But yes, definitely people contacting us because they're a refugee or they're having issues with their visa status, or they might be overseas in a refugee camp. But yeah, a whole range of different issues. They might be being persecuted for their sexuality. And yeah, they're very challenging phone calls when people call up.
And if you don't, sorry to interrupt, but are you then advising them and directing them in regards to support networks, services, things they can do?
My particular team doesn't have that role, so we take down the details as needed, and then we have a campaign support team of volunteers who make that initial assessment. So they work really closely with our campaigns team to be able to see if we are able to escalate it further, whether that be getting in contact with the International Amnesty Office or working with them, on a more domestic basis, if it is closely related to our core campaigns. Otherwise, they can also provide referrals as well. So they have more dedicated resources to be able to do that. And then, yeah, we just take down the details. So again, it's not the most interesting, but
I think it's interesting. Like when you say that Amnesty International challenges systemic human rights violations, does that mean there's like a lot of communication with governments on various levels and government services and questioning their protocols and practices?
Yes, there's a lot of advocacy working with government behind the scenes, like internal track type campaigning, wanting them to, change their legislation, introduce certain laws, repeal certain laws. So that's actually really important because I think that some people, especially in the activist community, don't trust the government at all, and are more like, abolish the system, anarchy, which is like, I don't know, I don't dislike that, but I think that given that this is, the system that we're working in, I do, and they are ultimately at the moment the decision makers, although that's influenced by, the public as well. I think that it is, I guess, important to kind of like lobby MPs, really.
I love the fact that you even mentioned like there's people out there who are saying abolish the system, because I'll be honest, I think about that all the time. It's not working. Let's be honest, it's not working. Yeah. However, we do have to be pragmatic, right? And go, okay, these are the cards we're dealt. How can we adapt to that?
it's hard to maintain that balance because I do agree. Sometimes I'm like, tear it down, smash the patriarchy, abolish the police, let's redo it all.
Abolish the police.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I'm scared.
Have you not heard? That was from Black Lives Matter.
Yes. Yep. Okay. I agree.
Less popular here.
I know that. I'm aware of it, but okay. Because it raises a lot of big questions.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why. Sometimes you have those days where it's like, let's just get rid of it all, start it again. But that's just not how it works.
Here's my question though. Someone who's obviously passionate about human rights, innately, it seems that way. Do you ever have moments of the problem's too big? I can't do it. I'm over it.
Yes.
Well, what keeps you going then?
I don't think I have a choice.
Why? Why don't you have a choice?
Well, especially with something like climate change, I'm just like, I can't swear, can I?
You can. Yes, my love. Actually,
problem.
It's up to you.
In terms of swearing?
Yeah. My last guest dropped it. Look, I don't even go there, but he dropped a bad word. And I'm like, he said it. It's staying on. It's my podcast.
All right.
Anyway, keep going.
Well, it's a fucking huge problem.
Yes, it is.
And it's so overwhelming. We don't even have all the solutions. There's no such thing as a perfect solution, unfortunately. But we've got to make do because what's the other alternative? Not doing anything? That is just not an option.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and I think that for me, actually doing something is almost a form of self-care because I don't think I would feel much worse about it if I wasn't doing anything at all because at least I'm doing something, I'm trying my best, and at the end of the day, I've tried. If it fails, at least I tried, I can live with myself.
Do you feel like you're living with purpose?
Not really. I have really lazy days sometimes. Most days.
Okay, next. Here's another way to look at it. Do you feel like you are, in some small way, being of service to the world?
Yeah. Sure, yeah. I do.
And how does that sit with you?
Strangely, because I think that I don't really tooting my own horn or, it feels a bit wanky sometimes. I think my life stories is actually very, very wanky.
Wanky?
Yeah.
Well, how did you end up in that role that you're in now with Amnesty International?
I got lucky. Literally, I did not apply for a single job when I left uni, and I applied for that job and I happened to get it. I met, it is an admin support role basically. So I had previously had admin experience and that really helped. I think I'd done a lot of volunteering that particular year and that probably helped. And I also volunteer at Lifeline as a crisis supporter. So I still volunteer at Lifeline. And I think, basically, I think that's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's a really nice thing to do. For those that are unaware of what Lifeline is, could you just give us a quick rundown of what you do?
Mm-hmm. So Lifeline is a suicide prevention organisation. So it has a goal of seeing an Australia without suicide. It's been around for 60 so years, and it offers crisis support for people who need it. So it's a free hotline, basically, that you can call. You can also text. There's a website with a whole bunch of resources, and it's volunteer run, which is crazy. I did not know that until I became a volunteer. So, I've been doing that for it'll be 3 years in January.
No way. You give up your time to do that.
I know.
That's really special. There's a lot of people that wouldn't do that. And I'm sure that it has moments of being quite heavy, yeah?
Yes.
How do you manage that personally? Does it affect you?
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to do it is because I am lucky enough to have not had a lot of lived experience yet of mental health. Who knows what could happen next year or in the future. But I felt that I would be less likely to be triggered than other people and that I in my life up until that point, the emotionally challenging things that I had experienced, which isn't much to be honest, but I felt like I can compartmentalize things quite well. So I was curious to see, and I felt that maybe I'd be better placed than other people. In terms of how I manage that ongoing, I mean, they're really good. They give you so much support. Like you can debrief. There's a supervisor there. If it's a challenging call, you can call them over even. They can't take the call, but you can call them over. They can support you. You can debrief after the call. You can go home. You know, there's been plenty of times I've cancelled shifts because I'm like, oh my God, I cannot deal with this today.
Yeah.
You can take breaks, and everyone's really supportive.
And so you'll spend hours just answering phone calls.
So it's actually a pretty huge volunteer commitment, to be honest. Like it's considered a professional volunteer opportunity. So you're expected to do over 140 hours in a year. So it averages about a 4-hour shift a week with 12 weeks off. But if you don't make that, which I did not in the past year, they can extend it. And, you know, if you're struggling, you have a conversation with them. They're not going to like turn anyone away. So yeah, it's usually a 4-hour shift. But you know, you only take a call when you're ready. It's not like back-to-back calls. There's documentation, you're chatting with people. So, you know, you might do like 5 to 6. I mean, it really depends. The calls are so different.
If you don't mind me asking, does it vary in terms of how, I guess, busy it gets in terms of the time of day or week?
Yes, there's peak times.
Okay.
But they roster accordingly.
Okay.
So it doesn't really affect the experience of the volunteer too much because, again, you know, there could be 10 phone calls in the queue, but you're only taking one when you're ready, and that shouldn't really impact. You know, if you're not ready, don't take a call. We get a call, Lifeline receives a call every 30 seconds. And this year there's been a huge increase. But luckily this year there's been a huge increase of volunteers as well because people have, you know, been in lockdown, had a bit more time, maybe even lost their jobs. So we have been able to meet that demand this year, which is really, really fantastic.
Has the data spiked since COVID?
Yes.
Dramatically?
I don't really have access to the figures, but there's definitely been...
Have you noticed it on the ground level or doing what you do?
Not really because... Yeah, no, not really, but people talk about it a lot. Like it's definitely been a subject of conversation in a lot of calls, particularly Melbourne. You know, there was a increase in calls from Melbourne. And yeah, it's kind of difficult because COVID was one of those things where you were experiencing, at least initially, everyone was kind of in the lockdown. So you could really relate and you wanted to share that, but we can't share our own user experience, which I don't really struggle with. But with COVID, I guess I wanted to say like, you know, I get it. Like, oh, it sucks. It's so, I don't know.
You can't say that.
No.
I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. From your position in Lifeline and the role you take, do you notice a gender disparity?
With calls? To be honest, not really.
You think it's quite even?
I mean, I don't have the data, so
and that's what I'm saying.
Based on my qualitative experience.
Based on your personal experience?
No, I mean, you definitely get more older people. Okay. Not like old, but like middle-aged plus, I would say. I've not really had many calls with kids, but they definitely do call. And, I mean, there's kids helpline, so they might be going there instead. No, not in terms of gender.
Okay. I'm just curious. I am just curious.
Yeah,
and
fair question.
There's a deep question inside me about to come out, okay? You just said that Lifeline take one call approximately every 30 seconds nationwide. Why do you think our society is at that point where a service like that is required at that level?
Well, there's not the appropriate funding of the other services, which is the really, I mean, there's a lot of other things I could say in terms of like society and where we're at.
That's what I want to. That's what I want to get into a little bit, because, like, where do you think we've gone wrong as a society when we have that level of
it's disgusting.
Mental illness occurring?
It's awful, and there's 8 suicides a day in Australia, and there's way more attempts, and for males in particular, it's 75% of the suicides in Australia are men.
Yeah.
And when you look at the statistics, it's just horrifying, and it's really hard to comprehend. I think
big picture.
I think that I think there's a lot of factors. I think there's a lot of pressure on people now. As a young person, I feel like there's almost too many options for me, and it can be incredibly overwhelming to feel a sense of having to make something of yourself and like live up to this potential, and you're comparing yourself to others on social media all the time, and feeling increasingly connected but disconnected, having all these like superficial social relations. So there's that, but I also think that at the same time, there's an increasing gap between the rich and the poor. I don't think, we can talk about the what's happening psychologically, but then there's also just the material conditions that we live in, where people, welfare's being cut. The current rate of welfare in Australia is below the poverty line. In the middle of a pandemic, when the job rate, like there's 13, actually no, it's 18 now. Depends on the research that you look at, but there's 18 job seekers for every job available, and the government's forcing people to live below the poverty line. And obviously that has a impact on people's mental health. And then there's like, discrimination. Basically, if you're not like, I don't know, I don't want to say, well, if you're not like a rich white man, then you face some kind of systemic barrier and discrimination, which does have a mental health impact, I would say. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like I don't really want to speak on behalf of other people's experience, because I have actually been blessed to have really great mental health. So I don't know. That's my appraisal based on an outsider's perspective.
Well, I put you on the spot massively because it's a huge question, and let's face it, there's no black and white response to that.
Yeah, there's no way. It's so complicated.
Yeah. But I was very interested to see what would come out of you when I sort of brought that up. And it's really funny because I noticed that the first thing you went to was like technology, social media. Those themes just pop up time and time again whenever people talk about social media. Another one I think really pops up is this mass consumer society that we are living in, and that we are feeling less than if we don't have stuff.
I almost think it's also got something to do with the decline of religion, which is like a pretty...
I can't believe you said that. I've been talking about that. Keep
really?
Going. Yeah, go.
I just feel that people lack that sense of purpose and meaning in their lives, and they're filling it with capitalism and consumerism and materialism, because we get sold this message, day in and day out, buy these things, you'll be happy, look like this, you'll be happy, because companies want to make money. And it's not spiritually or personally fulfilling. And I think I'm not religious.
I was going to ask.
But I do think that it provides a sense of purpose for people, which I think is very important. And I think that we need to spend, if we're not going to be a religious society, then we need to spend time having conversations about what is meaningful so that we can develop that sense of purpose. And for me, that's, community, giving back, those values. But a lot of other people don't have that. And I can understand why.
Oh, I love that you're saying these things, but especially to hear it from a 24-year-old. Like, I'm not saying that there's not other 24-year-olds that don't share that view, and I don't want to sound like there's a prejudice there. However,
ageist. No.
Ageist. I'm an ageist. Kind of am. No, but I must admit, I'm not religious myself, but I do believe in spirituality. But with religion, I mean, I've really been like analysing it, and I think when you strip it back, fundamentally, it gives people a moral compass and foundation. And I just feel like that old adage of, you either believe in something or fall for everything is really true. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, like if religion is going to give you this direction and values that otherwise you wouldn't have, well, it's not a bad thing, especially if you're not being militant, And I think, and as I say this, it's because I'm actually probably confronted myself with my own sense of spirituality and maybe I'm challenged by religion because it's confronting me and some of my bullshit, you know what I mean? But I just think like it's a really profound thing you just sort of brought up there, personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the West in particular struggle with that sense of spiritual, like lack of spiritual meaning and understanding and purpose. So yeah, let's do some work on that. But I don't know, I think it can also lead people down interesting paths where they're trying to like find that as well.
Well, yeah, but it's like anything. Like I think it's the human condition, like where you just want more, and then I think it can also go that way with good things like religion, where someone becomes religious and then they want more enlightenment, they want more connection, more. Okay, and I think it's like we have this tendency to be sort of just compulsive in all that we do. I think
that's capitalism, though.
You think that's a product of capitalism?
Yes. Because fundamentally capitalism's about growth and profit.
It is. And it's bred into us.
Yeah. I don't think that necessarily in previous generations, a few hundred years ago, people were always like, more. I think people were like, this is my lot in life. I'm just going to get on with it. And it was, hard work. I'm not saying it was pretty. I don't want to glorify it. But I think people were probably more content because happiness also, the pursuit of happiness was so out of reach. Like you didn't even consider it as an option. Yeah. Whereas now it's like you've got to be happy. You've got to be, have all the things, have a perfect relationship, have a house, have a successful career. Even I think this is pretty bold, but I think that feminism has almost I think women are probably less happy now but I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think feminism is fantastic. I'm a very strong feminist. But I think that because when your opportunities widen, I think that your sense of contentedness maybe decreases.
Whoa. Yes.
I don't know if I explained that properly.
No, you nailed
it. But before women would just be like, I'm the wife, that's my role, I'm the homemaker. Not necessarily everyone, but that was, you just accepted it. Whereas now it's like, I have to have all these things and have the children, have the career as well. And often, women still have a double burden of taking care of the children, the house, and now having a career because men, for some reason, still, think the domestic realm is like the women's space. Yeah, I forget where I was going, but that's my statement.
I want to challenge you on something. You said, like, with the the feminist movement, possibly women are feeling, and I'm generalizing, less happy. Do you think maybe it's not happiness, it's less fulfilled? Yeah,
that's probably more accurate. I don't really like the word happy. I think that happiness is like more of a temporary emotion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to throw happy around a lot. I don't believe in happy anymore. I believe in fulfillment.
Yeah, I think that's a much more appropriate word. Thank you.
Yeah. That's all right. No.
I'm probably going to listen back and be like, oh my God, what was I saying? I did not explain that. But I hope that makes sense. And I don't think, again, that, as I said, I'm a feminist. Women's rights is fantastic. But I think...
Absolutely.
I think we need to do a bit more work as a society on that, like... cultivating meaning, and I think that's about having stronger relationships with people at its core.
Thank you. It is. I really do believe that, and I think that's what's been eroded again, that whole disconnect, because communication comes in various forms and levels, So obviously, like we're communicating verbally right now, but I'm also, obviously people can't see me, I'm communicating with my body language. I'm throwing my hands around and I'm like facial expressions. I'm sorry, emojis are getting pretty good these days, but they're not quite nailing it in terms of that communication. And
I know, like I used to call my friends in high school. Like I would
that's so
call them
weird.
on the landline.
How old were you when you had your first mobile phone?
Year 7. So
So 13,
13.
12, 13.
Yeah.
Was it a smartphone or a Nokia?
No, it was a flip phone.
Flip
I
phone.
thought it was cool.
Okay.
Had little stickers on it. I actually feel like I'm really lucky. I think I just missed out on like
I think so.
the technology. I was actually pretty anti-technology. Like I wouldn't use my phone much in high school at all until the later years. And I think that if I had been just a little bit younger, I would have grown up with it. And I think already with my younger siblings, I can see it has a real impact on people's psychology and like cognitive development.
What was high school like for you?
Really good.
Why?
I went to a really good school.
And why was it good?
It was selective.
Okay.
So I think that helps. People were conscientious. My year in particular was known as a very good year. You know, everyone got along. I wasn't bullied. I was in a very nice group of girls. Towards the end of high school, I think I realized I had nothing in common with a lot of them. But I think at some point I actually made a conscious decision to stay in that group because they were all just really nice people. They valued education. And I kind of wanted to stay away from the drama. And I think we were also encouraged to be really well-rounded students. I at least didn't feel like there was a huge focus on academics. We were quite good at sport. And I was involved in a lot of clubs. I was like the club queen in my senior years. So I started a knitting club. And I was also the editor-in-chief of the school magazine.
So you were active?
Yes. I did not.
So
lunchtimes were in meetings.
Wow.
How lame.
Were you school captain?
No.
Okay.
I was at the competition. I didn't even run. The competition was
believe
fierce.
I could imagine. How did you get into a selective school in the first place?
I don't know. I did the tests and I got in.
So it was an academic selective school?
Yes.
Public system?
Yeah, public, yeah.
Wow.
I'm really glad I went to a public school.
There's not many of them around, so to get into one of those, it's quite competitive.
I guess.
So humble.
Yeah, I think I was a voracious reader as a child. I'm not now, which is really sad, but I read so much and I think that really helped.
What did you like about reading so much then?
I don't know.
Was it escapism?
Not really, because my life was great. I was like literally traveling Europe. Like I lived in England for 2 years when I was younger, and we would travel, Eiffel Tower, Budapest, Prague, and there are pictures of me just head stuck in a book. Like my family would have to be like, Nanny, like look, it's the, Arctic Triumph. And I'd put my book down, pose for a photo. And I think, I think I just love stories. And human and people, I guess. It comes from that love of humans, I guess. I've never really thought about it.
Did you have that sense even as a kid? Were you interested in people even as a young person? Like as a,
I mean, who knows?
in your primary school years?
Maybe. I think.
What do you find interesting about people? Or what do you find interesting about cultures and people?
I do think it's probably accurate to say that from a young age I had a strong sense of like right and wrong, and I wasn't afraid to like speak out. I think my parents did a really good job at explaining things to me and encouraging me to have that voice. What was the question? Sorry.
No, like you said, you were like, an avid reader and you had a real thirst for knowledge, but a deep interest in humans and their stories.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, so do I. Like, I think we've got something in common there. Like, that's why, like, I guess that's what was the catalyst for the podcast, because I like to hear people's journeys and stories.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, and it expands your understanding of the human experience, and it develops your empathy, which is so important. And probably as someone who's grown up with a lot of privilege, I don't necessarily get that from my own lived experience. So I think it's really valuable and extremely important to actually hear other people's stories, as you do through this podcast, to learn and to empathize and advocate for, I mean, not on behalf of people, but standing in solidarity with people.
Yeah, because it's a challenging, world and life that we've been thrown into, that we really had no choice,
Yeah.
It's so, and even the people that I think have got their shit together, they don't even really know what they're doing here. Do you ever think that? Like they don't really know. Like, I actually I've had numerous friends, but who've passed away. I had one friend in particular who was really, really wealthy, a lot of money, passed away from natural cause. Well, I don't say that, illness. And at his funeral, not once did anyone doing the eulogy or any of the conversations pre and post funeral did anyone mention how many houses he owned, the cars he owned, the money he had in the bank. I didn't hear it once. Not once. It was so-and-so really liked to crack a joke, loved fishing, loved bushwalking, surfing, whatever. So, and I remember I just had a moment of like, what are we spending a majority of our time doing, chasing money? I'm not being like, I don't want to sound too, out of touch with the fact that we need to survive in this world. But are we placing too much emphasis on it? And is it making our society sick?
I think that, yes. I think there's a threshold of money that someone needs, and that's been proven by research.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Or I guess it would vary from culture to culture, country to country.
Actually, that's interesting because happiness, fulfillment, contentedness, whatever word you want to put on it, but it's actually societal, so it's relational. You compare yourself to the people around you, and your happiness is related to that. But there is a base level of material wealth that you need to be able to meet your basic needs, plus a bit extra, and not worry about that as a kind of survival thing. And then the rest, there's a decreasing relationship between the amount of money that you make on top of that and your level of well-being. Well-being is probably a better word.
Yes.
I did a happiness course in uni, so.
Oh, was that an actual subject?
Yeah.
So what did you study at uni?
Sociology.
I said that in the bio.
Sorry, I did just interrupt you as well. Sorry.
No, you studied sociology at uni.
Yes.
Which, now that you've sort of told us a little bit about your background, it makes perfect sense. You graduated with honours.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe yourself as a student at university? Were you driven by grades, or were you driven by personal progress? And be honest, you weren't driven.
No.
You graduated with honours.
Yeah.
The grades just came.
Yeah, I'm one of those really terrible, annoying people.
I hate you.
Yeah, you should.
I used to have a friend
so
like
unfair.
that. I had a friend in high school like that. I remember Cameron Goose, if you ever listen to this, he was so smart. He did nothing. And I think he ducks the school.
Wow.
Got some crazy
I'm not quite at that level. Yeah, it is. I hate the word. I don't know.
So what?
Uni for me, actually, I kind of regret my uni experience.
Why?
I didn't make many friends.
I don't believe it.
I didn't really try to.
Why?
It was really hard in my degree because it was an arts degree, and you go to class. Every class you have is different people. Right. And then you're there with them for 12, 13 weeks.
Yeah.
For 2, 3, 4 hours a week, maybe, if I go to lectures, which I didn't go to lectures. And then you end the subject and you never see them again. So, and me living I studied in the same place that I lived. And so I wasn't like, I just went home. A lot of people who lived on campus, you would like hang around maybe afterwards.
And they've moved to the area from somewhere else for university.
And you're forced to make friends.
Yeah, but you grew up in a university town.
Yes. I mean, I never wanted to go to Wollongong Uni.
Why?
Because I just wanted to move away and use that university experience as an impetus to move away because I thought it would be a good life experience. But then I realized if I did that, I wouldn't be able to go on exchange. So I did decide to stay at home and save up for exchange. But yeah, I mostly regret not really putting in the effort to make friends and not getting involved on campus because, as I mentioned, I did a lot in high school. And I think when I got to uni, I was kind of like, oh, let's just give myself a break. And then it went so quickly. And then I was like, oh my God, crap, I've done nothing. And then I really overcompensated.
So you weren't president of the student union?
No.
What? Were you president of the student union?
I don't think I was involved in a single club.
Really?
Oh, there was a feminist society that I went to maybe one of it, two.
Apart from the obvious, what immediately drew you to being part of the feminist society? Aside from the obvious, which is...
I think it was just the obvious.
It was just the obvious. Like, I mean, because there are a lot of women who are not drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
So why was it so burn? Why did you feel it was so burning within you?
I just think it's really important, and I want to learn more and think. And it's often in those conversations where you think really critically. And people have different opinions. And so it's just about learning and hearing from other people and probably also that activist side of me that wanted to be more active, you know. I had a lot of beliefs and I'll talk to my friends and family and on social media about women's rights and stuff. But I think there's also, I guess, that point where I'm like, okay, well, I can do more. So let's do more. Speaking
of doing more, the Tomorrow movement. Like, seriously, I had a look at the website and I'm just like, this is bold. And it's also like, but one thought that sort of went through my mind is like, are these guys trying to like bite off more than they can chew? So some of the themes of like, you know, like bringing back democracy and challenging big business. I mean, to you know, advocate for climate change, which is obviously a good one. But I'm just like, wow, these are big topics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how'd you get involved?
I got involved several months ago. So it's really fresh as a movement. A young group of about 13 young people started it about a year ago, got together, were like, let's do this. The system isn't working for young people. And we want to push bold, transformative, ambitious solutions and policies. So I actually was friends with a few people who were part of that original group on Facebook. I briefly, after uni, was involved in a fossil fuel divestment campaign at UOW, the uni, but that was after I finished my degree. And so I kind of was friends with some of those people and I saw that they were in recruiting and I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. And one of the main things that actually drew me to it is that it's really similar to Sunrise Movement in the US, which is behind the Green New Deal, if you've heard of the Green New Deal. And they've grown exponentially over the past few years, couple of years. And they are the same, like similar, about basically using the climate crisis as an opportunity to achieve transformative social change that results in justice for everyone. So, you know, why don't we, obviously climate change is a huge issue and it requires transformative change. Why don't we use that as an opportunity to actually address systemic racism, address poverty, bring workers with us, address the class inequality that we have. So because, you know, if it requires that level of change, why not just do it all at once?
Why not?
Bite off more than you can chew. And I think that the crisis that we're in, though, it requires those ambitious solutions. The solutions that have been proposed are so weak. They're not good enough. Like what we have 9 years now to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. We're already at almost 1.5 degrees in some areas. Like climate change is here and it's terrifying. But yeah, I think why not be bold? Let's just, and I mean, I think the part of the democratic process is having to negotiate and compromise. That's okay. But let's go out with a huge, our vision and see what bits we can make happen.
Another big question. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about democracy in our country now? Has it been eroded?
I think that we're better off than a lot of other places, like the US, a lot of other, at Amnesty, obviously, a lot of the work we do is actually around political activists, and it's insane. People will be jailed for a Facebook post. Like I would be in jail forever for the rest of my life in some other countries. Australian democracy, I think the media is obviously a huge problem, and I'm really glad that we're having that conversation now, with the Kevin Rudd petition about the Murdoch media. Social media, again, it keeps coming up, is also having an impact because that's where people get their news from. But I do, and actually, of course, like one of the campaigns I'm a part of with Amnesty is around protecting the right to protest, because there is some crackdown on protests here in Australia at the moment. So although we can acknowledge that we are better off than a lot of other places, I think it's also important to hold ourselves to a high standard and be like, you know what, we can do better than this.
Well, yeah. I kind of feel like any time there is a law around protesting, I kind of feel like that's just the fundamental of democracy right there. Obviously, if it's done in a non-violent way, it just doesn't make sense to me. That's not democracy. It's it's the most obvious one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of the average person doesn't really understand the importance of protest. Yeah, I think it's been challenging with the pandemic. I don't think it's necessarily been appropriate to protest this year.
Because it's health and safety, obviously.
Yes, which does, I think, at some point, right, we have human rights, but some rights are competing. The right to health and safety does sometimes trump the right to freedom of assembly, depending on the situation. I think this was one of those particular cases, towards the beginning of the year. I think now those things, that the risk level has dropped. It's about going back and being like, okay, well, maybe we can have more than 20 people at a protest. Like up until recently, the New South Wales police in particular have been really bad, were, arresting and finding people when there were 21 protesters, and there were like thousands of people at Bondi Beach. Like, I don't know.
I know. The hypocrisy kills me sometimes. Like I hear things like that, but I'm a school teacher, and I mean, I was just in a classroom no bigger than this lounge room with 30 students, and there's definitely no social distancing going on. With all the windows are closed, I mean, I opened them, but still, there's some hypocrisy there, and it's frustrating. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it has been hard to balance those things, and I think the government has overall done like a pretty good job, and we should acknowledge them for that. But again, I think it's about asking those questions. And yeah, protesting is the fundamental of democracy, as you say.
I think it is. I really think it is. I actually, I want to be more active with that stuff. I think my personally, my desire to be more opinionated and active in causes is actually, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. But I guess it's better late than never.
Yeah, exactly.
But I sit here listening to you and your journey. I must admit, there's an element of I'm envious. I wish I had that sense of conviction when I was.
I have no hobbies though.
Really? Well, that is it your hobby?
It's how I spend my time sometimes.
You enjoy it?
Yes.
Great.
It's my coping mechanism. It's actually very selfish, really.
Coping for what?
Coping for the
life.
Crazy effed up world we live in. Yeah, it is. Like, actually, when COVID hit, I'd actually quit Lifeline the week before.
Why'd you quit?
Because of burnout. Because I was commuting to Sydney for my work 5 days a week. So that's 20 hours on the train. And then I was having to do Lifeline 4 hours a week on the weekend. And obviously, I mean, I'm a young person. I like having my weekends sometimes. And I'd done that for like a year or so, year and a half. And I got accredited as a crisis supporter. So I kind of like got my official certificate, and that was kind of my goal. And I'd moved beyond that. I was like, I think it's getting a bit hard. And I was increasing my activism at that point. And, at some point you've got to prioritize your own well-being, and that's fair enough. So I was like, okay, this is getting too much. And then the week after, I was told I was working from home for like the foreseeable future. So I'd regained 20 hours back in my life, and I felt this intense desire, being one of those people lucky enough to still have my job, to give back. And I was like, I mean, so many people rallied together to support each other. It's incredible what people do in times of crisis. But I was like, this is my way of giving back. So I signed back up. I was like, hey, actually I'm free.
But how are you going to deal with that commute again?
Well,
you're going to have to do it again.
I know, but I think that COVID has changed the workplace fundamentally moving forward, like even after the pandemic, because, we can work from home and we can be productive from home. So why would you be required to be in the office all the time? So already at my workplace, we've been told that there will be flexible working arrangements moving forward. So basically I'm not going back.
It could be a positive. Wow.
Yeah.
See, there is good things to grow out of this.
Yeah.
There's numerous good things.
I think so. I mean, yeah, I don't want to take away from, like, a lot of people have been really knocked about by the pandemic, but I think it's also a learning opportunity.
Amazing.
We take the things that work and we get rid of everything else.
So what's next? What do you think the future holds for you? Do you have like set goals?
Oh,
No. But do you have like a sense of where the future might take you, or you want it to take you?
Yes. I mean, I think I didn't know.
No.
I think it's about continuing to live my values. I mean, I don't really see myself putting down the activism stuff anytime soon. And if anything, that's probably going to increase because the climate crisis isn't going anywhere. So probably going to be something to do with that.
Would you ever consider politics?
People have been saying this to me recently.
To get your foot in.
I'm terrified.
Why?
Do you know how women are treated in politics?
Change it.
I'm so scared of being a public figure. Like,
Why?
sometimes I like the idea of it.
Can I ask that? I want to strip that back a little bit. Why are you terrified of being a public figure? Is it scared of judgment?
Scared of judgment, but also just the abuse, like the harassment, particularly women.
How do you know that? Like, where's your evidence?
There was
for
a
that?
report that I read yesterday.
I
didn't read the report.
I
read the article. Oh my God, did I just stuff up the sound?
No, it's okay. No, it's just your headphones.
Okay.
Did you kick the cord?
Yeah, I did.
Can you still hear yourself?
Yeah.
How does it sound?
Fine.
See, that's what you'd sound like when you're doing the Prime Minister acceptance speech.
But why me? I'm just some like white girl with opinions.
Maybe it's not your choice. Maybe it's going to choose you, Maneesha.
Oh no. I mean, it's funny because a couple of people have said that. I don't know. It's scary putting yourself out there because I don't like being wrong. And I don't really, I've had a very protected life.
What do you mean protected?
Protected from other people's opinions about me. And
by who?
Negative opinions.
Who's protected you? Your parents?
No. I just mean like sheltered. Like I've not been bullied. I've never had to deal with like people not liking me. I don't think I'm going to be good at dealing with that.
But I mean, that's interesting to me because how do you know that's even going to happen?
because that's the nature of being, especially a politician.
Yeah.
Like firstly, you're forced to compromise. People go into politics with, values and ambitions. They want to change the system. Like for a lot of them, I believe that. But then they're forced to compromise because of the party-based system that we have. You have to have this conversation with the party, figure out what your policy is, and then toe the party line.
If you are voted into that position on any level, technically a majority will like you.
Technically speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, no. A lot of people, they just vote for like the least worst option, including myself.
I must admit, I'm so disillusioned with politics.
Yeah.
Fuck politics. I can't help it. I'm disillusioned.
That's okay. The system doesn't work. That's,
What do I do? What do you say to someone like me who's disillusioned, middle-aged
run for
man?
politics. No, we don't need more middle-aged men. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think
I agree.
I think that I've really enjoyed seeing like the rise of really strong political leaders like Jacinda Ardern and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the squad in the US Democratic Party. I think that's actually been very inspiring because it's like, you can be a young person and a woman and
how young are they though?
AOC has just turned 30, I think, this year.
Okay, that's good, yeah. I mean, that's something that's always been a bugbear for me is like, forget gender, forget ethnicity. I've just always been like perplexed by why there isn't more young people up the top. And that's like a fundamental flaw of the system. Like get the young people in there because then if they're going to stay in there for a longer period of time, they're going to be able to initiate long-term change.
Yeah.
And that never made sense to me. Like,
yeah. No, totally.
Don't get me wrong. I think there needs to be a balance of that, that old wisdom and knowledge. And I don't think it should be all.
Yeah. I guess it's about balancing like experience, and people associate like experience, a number of years lived, with having more.
Or as being superior. Or as being superior?
Yeah.
See, I'm against that now. I think it's such bullshit. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's specifically Australia's political system. It's harder to do that. Whereas in America, you can run for. Actually, I don't really know the details on this. I should caveat that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Please fact check. But I'm pretty sure you can like platform an incumbent party member. So that's what happened in New York with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There was the Democratic Party member that had been a member of the seat for however long, like decades. And then you sign up as a member of the Democratic Party, and there's probably some other stuff you have to do as well, but you just run. And the party doesn't have to choose you. Whereas in Australia, the party chooses who runs. So it's a lot easier in the States to kind of just slowly kind of run and just take down the old incumbent Democrats than it is in Australia, where you are required to, have those relationships with the party, build that trust. They choose you, and obviously that's impacted by a whole number of other things as well, like unconscious bias around like gender, race, and not even like a lot of people just think that it's too risky to put in a Muslim woman because people won't vote.
A lot of people. When you say a lot of people, the party members.
I mean, I don't actually know this, but
no, but like you're surmising. That's okay.
It would be. I think that there are definitely decisions like that being made. Yeah, about what is strategic and who is strategic.
Definitely.
And that's not necessarily wrong if your goal is to like.
I think it's wrong.
Get in, but exactly when it comes to like the structural consequences of those decisions, it just makes it harder and harder for diverse people to get ahead. And then that's why our political system is not diverse.
I mean, on a personal level, and I do understand the mechanics of it, but I hate how parties can just remove the prime minister or remove the leader of the party, and then all of a sudden we have a different prime minister that we didn't vote for. And I do believe that, the people are voting for that particular person based on their character, based on their credentials. You know, they're drawn to that person based on their charisma even. You know, that's our right to vote. And then it's just like, oh no, the party has decided that it's not a good political move. We're gonna remove them and put someone else in without us having a choice. Like, it just never sat right with me. And I do understand it, but it's just a bunch of bullshit. And I'm listening to what you're saying, and I agree with everything you're saying, and you articulate it so well. And I just go, oh my God, it's just too broken. I can't deal with it. Like, and so I'm going to be honest and say that I'm deliberately, you know, disassociating from mainstream media, mainstream politics, like because it's actually making me physically ill and confused and upset constantly. And I'm maybe choosing ignorance in terms of my understanding on what's going on. But what I am finding is that when it is a big political move or there's something that is going to impact on me directly, you find that out anyway. I don't need to be seeing it on the news like day in, day out.
Yeah.
That's been a big game changer for me. And I must admit, it's like my mental health's improved. Because I don't know about you, and I get the sense you're similar to me. It's like I'm affected by people. I'm affected by injustice, whether it's to me or somebody else. Like, it sits with me, and I become very resentful. And yeah, and then that resentment kind of just like, you know, churns away at me. And I don't know if it's a product of getting older either.
Yeah.
You get cynical.
I definitely think so. And I think that's why you see so many young people who are leading social movements and have done throughout history. It's often young people who are out there because they still have that sense of optimism and naivety and hope, which fuels their passion and their knowledge that this can be changed. And once you lose that is when you lose the ability to make change, because if you don't believe it can happen, then it will never happen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it is to some extent like normal to become desensitized and have that naivety slowly drain from you as you age, and you just become jaded because how many times can a person have that hope and then be beaten down before it's like, oh, it's too hard. But I think that we need to manifest hope, and that's why I think people probably think that I'm like really negative about the world, but it's completely the opposite. Like, I have to have optimism. I'm like an optimistic person, and that's precisely what makes me an activist. Having that hope that things can be better. And once you lose that, that's the sad thing. And that's when there's, you know, no hope.
Oh my God, Maneesha, that's epic. It's almost like a beautiful way to end, if I'm honest. Like what a thing to end on. But I do have one more little question for you, and it's like, I mean, I think you're a little bit of you're unique. You're like a unique minority young person who has a drive and desire to be involved in the things you're involved in. I mean, really, you're a minority in that respect. However, do you feel as a generalization that many young people your age are just completely disillusioned now?
Yes and no. I actually think that activism is really popular amongst young people now. Like, young people are so woke. Yeah. It's almost like a cultural status thing.
Okay, so I'm out of touch then with young people.
I mean, we're all in our own bubbles. I can only.
But are they woke because it's going to get them followers on Instagram?
Possibly. I don't know. Is that necessarily a bad thing though? Like, I've thought about it. I do. I actually should use it more, but I don't.
To push your agenda?
Yeah. To push my agenda, basically. Well, I
think it's the best
people don't use Facebook. Young people don't use Facebook anymore.
No, it's embarrassing.
Like, I was posting all this stuff on Facebook, and then it's like, just talking to the oldies.
Do you make TikTok dance videos?
No.
Why not?
I've heard there's a really vibrant political TikTok community.
Is there?
Yeah.
I've never used TikTok.
Neither have I.
It's one too many things.
They've they were like involved in the Trump campaign. Like,
were they?
Yeah, like buying up all these tickets for his
TikTok, the actual TikTok company.
People who use TikTok.
Who have a lot of followers.
No. They just
TikTokers.
TikTokers. That's
How
what
did I miss that? I missed all that. So what they do?
they, Trump has these rallies and they registered for free. And so people, like the rallies were a lot smaller because all these people who were just registering and not showing up. So it was like really embarrassing for Trump, like having these massive rallies and there were, all these like empty seats.
Great.
So yeah, I think that social media has fostered a new awareness of social issues for young people, and a lot of young people are really active. Like look at the school strikers in Australia.
Love that.
Like they organise massive rallies.
How did you feel when was it because I was in Bali when that happened and there was the big outrage that the children wanted to strike at school? I mean, which I just can't believe. That was like they should be encouraged. 100%. Activism is education is activism. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm getting
totally.
angry. See, I'm angry. I'm not angry. I'm
channel
not
that anger though. Channel the
I'm
anger.
I'm actually not angry. But how did you feel when those politicians came out? Was it ScoMo actually denounced does that kind of stuff just roll off you? You don't absorb it, or does it just set more of a fire in you and go, that's it? Get out of there, white male.
Yeah. I think there's a process, like depends what it is. It's definitely, you get frustrated and you're like, really? And I often have those moments. And then I'll let it out, express myself. Often I talk to my partner about it. We have, vent together. And then I'm, motivated to do something about it. And I also don't think I experience emotions like incredibly deeply.
Have you always been quite even tempered?
Yes.
Like your temperament is quite.
Yeah.
And that's just been even as a child?
Very cheery disposition. Yeah. I think I'm I'm very even tempered. I mean, sometimes I'll get in a bit short, but that's pretty not rare. And, if I ever snap at my partner, I'll always almost immediately apologize because I feel bad, and that's about as bad as it gets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. How do you deal with people who are not even tempered? Are you repelled by them? Do you avoid them?
No, because my sister's not very even tempered, but I love my sister.
You went on record and said that.
I know.
Sibling rivalry.
I was like, who do I know that's a bit gets a bit heated?
Yeah.
It actually has caused major problems with our relationship when we were younger because, I think I would judge her for the way she reacted. But now I think I have a better understanding of mental health and people and how they respond, and that's just how people respond sometimes, and that's okay as long as you're not causing.
Or is it just this acceptance of who they are as a person? That's how they were built.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of.
It is. I mean,
it depends on how depends on the situation. Some people are abusive and you need to draw a boundary. You shouldn't have to tolerate that. But I think it's also, I guess, important to understand that you process things a certain way and you react a certain way and other people react to things a certain way, and be to some extent understanding of that as long as it's not abusive. like
being empathetic?
Yeah.
So empathy?
Empathy. Yeah, being empathetic towards other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's back. I think we can go into detail and we can get deep and talk about a whole bunch of shit, but I just really believe that fundamentally it comes down to the themes that you've raised, and I've heard them time and time again. It comes down to, building relationships and building empathy for one another. I think they should be and are the foundation for so much.
100%. I think there was an article that I read recently. It sounds so unscientific. But Jan Fran, if you know Jan Fran, she does she's a political figure journalist, and she does a podcast called The Pineapple Project, and they looked into happiness, and she was looking into the research, and what she found is that the people who are have the greatest level of well-being, have the strongest relationships, and it's all about relationships, really, which came up earlier. And I think, yeah.
And and then living in communities and tribes and villages, and anyone that listens to my podcast regularly, they're going to be so sick of me saying this, but I lived in Bali for the last 2 years and, observing how another culture lives, they are very much about living in communities. The grandparents live with you and in your compound, in your house, there's no homeless people, because if you're from that village, you are given somewhere to live and you're given food, or they find a job for you. Like you don't see people like begging on the streets as much. It does exist in the city centres, but yeah, it comes back to two major themes, and it's that relationships and community, and spirituality, and that's a daily practice with the Hindu religion. And for me, was the biggest game changer and takeaway doing that comparison between like a Southeast Asian culture and, I guess, how would we describe our culture? Like a westernized culture, Western culture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's generally the word used, but I mean, it's pretty problematic.
Or would you say a capitalist culture?
Both.
Yeah.
And an individualistic culture, which I think is the core.
As in me. I've got to tread on your head to get to the top.
Yeah, well, it's very individual. It's very focused on the individual.
Yeah.
Whereas the other societies, such as maybe Balinese society or Indonesian society, Eastern societies, generalizing, but they're, collectivist. So they are more focused about the collective. So they might self-sacrifice in order for the benefit of the greater good. And I think that can be problematic. And there actually are, because I think there's a lot of criticism now, especially on the left and in progressive circles, about individualism. But that gave us human rights. It's important to, I guess, respect people's individual identity and acknowledge that we're individuals. But then I do think it has gone too far, where we are, again, as you say, losing that sense of community and giving back. Whereas I think it's particularly, America is particularly individualist.
I agree.
So they're like, why should I do this? I don't want to pay my taxes because I want more money. I
don't want to pay my taxes either.
Really?
I pay them though.
Taxes are good as long as they're used well.
No, I know. Look, I understand it. Sorry.
No, that's right. You're so jaded. You should hang out with me more.
No, I'm a bit jaded. You've actually you've actually highlighted my jadedness. Yeah.
But as I said, that's probably a normal, rational response, and probably it's like a coping mechanism.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's avoidance, and it's also the end of, a very interesting year. There's been a lot of change in the world and my own life, and yeah, I think I think it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I could talk to you next year and go, yes, I'm going to be your campaign manager when you run for a political party of your choice.
Thank you. I'll hold you to that.
I'll hold you to that. I'm serious. When I have you back on the podcast I'd like to see you in office by 30. There you go. So in 6 years.
I've got plenty of time.
You got heaps of time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still young. Let me live a few years, party a bit more.
Do you party much?
No. But do what young people do.
What's that?
Party. No. Have fun, live my life, travel.
Travel more?
I don't know, actually. I have mixed feelings about
What?
travel now.
Why? I don't. I just want to get the hell on a plane, man.
I know, but the emissions.
Oh, sorry. The climate. Oh, the climate.
Oh, the climate. Seriously, as a young person, it's impossible for me now, knowing what I know.
Oh, I feel so ignorant.
Not factoring that into everything.
Yes.
And my future. You asked me earlier what I see, myself in 5 years. I'm like, who knows? My house could have burned down.
Exactly.
I associate the climate crisis. I think some people think about trees and animals and the Arctic poles melting. But I'm like, for me, it's like complete societal breakdown. It's the breakdown of our economy. It's like waves of refugees, increasing social hatred and division, like people not being able to get jobs and live. There's food shortages, water shortages, energy shortages, like complete fucking chaos.
Yeah.
And like that, for me, it's like the human element that actually inspires a lot of my climate activism. I forget where I was going. Sorry.
No, yeah.
I'm so tired.
Well, listen, like I think like it's been like an absolute pleasure having you on, and I just love, there's a passion there without sounding too cliche, but like your passion, and I this is a personal opinion, but I find you very unique in terms of the stereotypical young person, because when I was 24, I wasn't thinking about the things that you're thinking about. I was thinking about surfing and partying and skateboarding and traveling. I was traveling at that time too. But I wasn't looking at the bigger picture, and hopefully that someone will listen to this and that will maybe plant the seeds of change and growth, because I really do believe that from little ideas and little perspectives that people hear, big things can grow. So you don't know who that might touch. So thank you for your courage of being on.
Thank you.
Now, listen, I ask all guests to come with a cause that they want to support or advocate for. So I kind of feel like you're going to have one or two.
Too many.
What do you got?
That's the problem. I mean, I think that Tomorrow Movement is obviously something that I'm really passionate about at the moment, that my main focus is.
I'm going to write these down. Sorry, keep going.
Tomorrow Movement, primarily we're fighting for a society with good jobs, great public services and a safe climate. So it's about the economic justice side as well as the climate justice side. And the main thing we're calling for is a climate jobs guarantee. So everyone who wants a job gets a job.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious. Doable though, right?
But I say, why not be ambitious? Like, it's kind of stupid not to be ambitious.
But governments have had policies of full employment before in the past. There's been massive investments in infrastructure and job creation, especially in times of economic downturn and crisis. So why not do that?
So governments have had that. So there's jobs for all.
They didn't necessarily have a jobs for all policy, but they had jobs creation programs that effectively led to a society of high employment.
Okay.
Yes.
Because if it's jobs for all, that's very similar to another type of society, like communist society.
It's jobs for everyone who wants one.
Okay.
If you don't want one, that's okay.
And
we also campaign for a living wage for everyone. So you still have a living wage.
Okay. Sorry to be like a stickler.
No. I think it's actually really important, because I'm going to be going out and having these conversations with people soon, like getting petition signatures.
Great.
So it's good practice.
That's a good foundation for your political career, but keep going.
So we're advocating for a climate jobs guarantee, basically. So we want to, that's basically a massive jobs creation program by the government that also addresses the climate crisis.
Okay.
And lifts everyone out of poverty at the same time. So we do struggle with funds. It's run by volunteers. Mostly there's only a handful of paid staff, and people put so much passion in. And we really do believe that we can.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Let's say someone donates to the Tomorrow Movement. Like, where will their funds, what would be an obvious way that they would see their funds being utilised?
Well, it's a campaigning and advocacy organisation, so similar to Amnesty International, for example, or many other campaigning, like Greenpeace.
Gotcha.
The same sort of thing. So it's about training activist leaders all over the country to feel empowered and to take action in their communities and build a groundswell of support for this campaign. Giving us the funds to be able to do that. So like, little things like banners, cost of materials and things like that, but also just valuing people for their work. Like, I make several regular donations, and almost all of them are campaigning and advocacy organizations, because I see it as an investment in our democracy.
Yes.
So I think that it can be difficult to conceptualize because it's not a tangible thing.
Yeah.
But I think you're investing in the health of our civil society, to have a thriving civil society of different organisations, groups of people advocating, campaigning for the betterment of society. And I think that's something that we should invest in financially.
Amazing.
So, please do it.
Amazing. So I'll put a link to the Tomorrow Movement in Maneesha's show notes, and you can find Maneesha's episode on terriblehappytalks.com, and you'll also be able to find links to the various other platforms that you can find this podcast, such as Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and TuneIn Radio, and you can find a platform that works best for your device. Now, listen, Maneesha, I've got a couple of presents for you.
Christmas.
The first one is from our friends at INDOSOLE. They give every single guest a free pair of shoes that are made from repurposed motor vehicle tyres. They're doing their thing for the environment, but they're also advocating for conscious consumer choices, and they're trying to shift the paradigm in ethical manufacturing and utilising this vast secondary resource market that exists, aka trash. It's not digging in landfill. That's where that stuff is. It can be repurposed. The second thing is you get are you nervous?
I'm
No,
curious.
don't be nervous. It's not that good. You get the Terrible Habit Talks Circle logo sticker.
Aw.
Now, I only give these to people that have been on the show. So
wow.
There's only 84 of these in circulation. So
Thank you. Thank
there you go.
you,
Stick it
Shan. Thanks,
wisely.
INDOSOLE as well. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
You're an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you want to end on? Something profound? No. Actually, I just want to say one more thing. If you use the THT code on the indosole.com website, you'll get a 15% discount as well. So, but is there anything more profound than that?
Wow, it's a really high bar. I mean, I think I would just encourage people to believe in your own ability to make a difference, because I think some people are like, they don't think that they can make a difference, and they can. And whether I personally think that political action and collective action is the most effective way to create social change. I'm biased. But just believe in your ability to make a difference. Yeah. That's not that profound.
I love it.
Sorry. Keep talking.